First, we're going to look at the chords for Study 1. This is the first example appearing in bar 1. Most of us are familiar with the standard open A power chord. Power chords at their most basic level consist of a root note and its fifth. In example 1, there is the addition of the octave on the G string. This is basically the root note in a higher register. So let's break that down. A is our root note, E is our fifth, and this is our octave A, or the root in a higher register. Next, we're going to take a look at example 2. This also appears or first appears in bar 1. Example 2 replaces the octave with a minor second 1 semitone higher on the G string. So the A note we had in example 1 is moved up a semitone higher to the B flat or A sharp note. Combined with the open A string as our root note and the E note our fifth, it will sound like this. The minor second conflicts wonderfully with the root note, as it does with the fifth. This combination is perhaps one of the most effective alterations for achieving darkness and dissonance. Example 3, first appearing in bar 2. This replaces the fifth of the A power chord with the minor sixth. So whereas in example 1 we had the A and the E note here, well, this fifth will be moved up to the F note, leaving the root A on the G string, as well as the open A string root. You could look at this as a small F chord, F being the root, A being the third, combined with the A bass. The tension created here is great, but must be resolved, which it does in the third bar. Example 4, first appearing in bar 5. This time round we have our root note, the fifth, and the major second. This voicing is one of my favourites and might best be described as a musical match made in heaven. Or is that hell? The addition of the major second to the root and fifth blends perfectly, even with lots of distortion. Example 5, first appearing in bar 5. This voicing occurs at the very beginning of bar 5, but only briefly before transforming into the previous example we looked at. This is an A minor chord, using the notes A, E, and C. Resolving back to example 4 lessens the tension somewhat. As a good exercise, we could try arpeggiating both examples in a made-up creation. It can sound very cool when switching back and forth. Let's look at a quick example by picking the A string, then the D string, and then the G string. And then the same for example 4. And alternating. Example 6, first appearing in bar 4. Technically, this example first appears in the fourth bar, in the last half, but only very briefly. It really starts to kick in at bar 7. In the first example, I mentioned the choice between 2 and 3 note voicings, depending on what we are going for. Bars 7 and 8 make a great example of this, adopting a simpler, more focused approach using only the root note with either the addition of the minor sixth or seventh. So in this example, we simply use the A string, with the F note on the D string. Example 7, first appearing in bar 7. So carrying on from the previous example, we begin to see that by employing certain intervals with the root note, we are able to create some nice atmospheric ideas. Let's alternate between example 6 and example 7. Note that in the example just played, I resolved to the A fifth power chord. For examples 8 and 9, we are utilizing an inverted shape. This simply means that the fifth is on the bottom, the lowest note. The root note is sandwiched between the fifth and its octave. So let's take a look at that. In example 8, we have the notes C, F, and C. The C note is our fifth, which is on the bottom, since this is the inverted shape. Our F is on the D string, so we bar our first finger over both. And we also have our C note there, that's our fifth, and it's actually the octave from this C note. Now this makes a great way of just providing some variation from the standard, say, F power chord. And it's fattened up quite a bit by adding in the C note there. So this is what example 8 sounds like. Example 9 is simply the same shape moved a whole step higher. And that will sound like this. Now, this one doesn't last long, only appearing briefly. It acts as a transition into the last 8 bars. The sound of this chord signifies the musical ascent, or climbing towards the climax. Example 10, first appearing in bar 29. This voicing is basically made up of the same notes as the first example, that being the A power chord, only that 2 of the notes, apart from the open 5th string, are in the next octave. So we have the open A string, the A note at the 7th on the D string, and we have the E note at the 9th fret on the G string. The open A string and the A note at the 7th fret on the D string combine to create a droning unison-like effect. Note that I'm only playing the A string and the D string in that case. And this is very useful for fattening up the sound. Example 11, first appearing in bar 29. This is an interesting voicing, drawing its power from the tension produced between the A string and the B flat note. The B flat note being at the 8th fret on the D string combined with the open 5th string. Take note that the intervallic distance is still a minor second, but the root note is in the lower octave. So for example, being the B flat note here, in the same octave the root note would be just here. That's the A note. And is a minor second interval. In this case though, we're replacing that A note with the open A string, which creates more space, but still the dissonance we need. Then with the addition of the D note at the 7th fret on the G string, we complete what is a most ominous sounding chord. Example 12, first appearing in bar 30. The only difference in this example and example 11 is that the 4th is replaced with the 5th. So in this case we have the B flat note with our open A string, but then we're going to replace the D note with the E note instead. And by looking at the B flat and the E notes on their own, the B flat might be considered the root note, with the E being a flattened 5th from the F note. We can see this more clearly by fretting a standard B flat power chord shape on the D string, flattening the 5th, same two notes. Combined with the A string, and another dark voicing presents itself. Example 13, first appearing in bar 31. This is an F major 7 chord without its third, and it makes a refreshing change from the standard power chord voicing commonly employed by most. This is another one of those noisy voicings that sound very nice with some high gain. In this case we have the F as our root, the C as our 5th, and our major 7th is the E note on the G string. Example 14, first appearing in bar 32. This is the actual same chord type as example 4, only moved up into the 8th position. So this time around we have F as our root, C as our 5th, and G will be our major 2nd. Again, this really does help to mix things up, creating a more melodic atmosphere rather than just sticking with a standard power chord shape, by moving back instead. And actually we do revert back to the standard F power chord right at the end, just providing some further variety.